What if I told you a single signature could drag an entire region back into a 1,000-year conflict? On July 10, 2020, with the stroke of a pen, Turkey's President Erdogan reconverted Hagia Sophia from a museum back into a mosque. 2 weeks later, the first prayers were held, and what had stood as a fragile symbol of peace was suddenly weaponized, turning Istanbul's skyline into the front line of a new holy war. But this isn't just about stones and domes. It's about how faith becomes more powerful than armies, redrawing maps, resurrecting old rivalries, and keeping Greece and Turkey locked in a cycle of collision. In this part of the world, every sacred site is a battlefield. From the 1955 Istanbul pogrom, when 73 Orthodox churches were burned in a single night, to the Cyprus invasion that split an island along religious lines, to today's Mediterranean standoffs, the sacred has always been a spark for conflict. And nowhere is this rivalry more visible than in the shadow of the Blue Mosque, a monument built not just as an act of devotion, but as a towering challenge to Hagia Sophia across the square. This is the story of the Battle of Hagia Sophia in the heart of Istanbul, where faith and power are still fighting for control, and the next chapter could change everything. On July 10, 2020, Turkey's highest court struck down Hagia Sophia's museum status, and President Erdogan signed the decree restoring it as a mosque. One stroke of a pen, and the ripple spread from Istanbul all the way to Athens, Washington, and beyond. For some Turks, it was a moment of deep spiritual pride, something long overdue. But for Greeks and much of the Orthodox world, it felt like desecration. After all, Istanbul already had more than 3,000 mosques, including the Blue Mosque right next door. Why then was this one building so explosive? Because Hagia Sophia isn't just about worship. It's about power and legacy. It's the ultimate prize in a centuries-old contest for dominance between empires, faiths, and nations. And the fallout came fast. Within 48 hours, Greece was calling for a tourism boycott. UNESCO threatened to revoke its World Heritage status. The EU hinted at sanctions. Even Turkey's $34 billion tourism industry looked like it could take a major hit. On the surface, it seemed like a reckless gamble, risking billions for symbolism. But for Erdogan, the math was different. His approval rating spiked 12 points overnight. Social media lit up with nationalist pride. In a country struggling with recession and political strain, Hagia Sophia became more than a mosque. It became a rallying cry. The lost revenue was a small price to pay for political survival. Meanwhile, Greece wasn't just watching from the sidelines. Parliament held an emergency session. Fighter jets thundered over the Aegean. Defense spending jumped by 15%. Greek warships shadowed Turkish vessels near Cyprus. It looked like an ancient rivalry had just found its newest battlefield. Because to Greece, this wasn't just about religion. It was the latest in a series of provocations. Turkish drilling off Cyprus, disputes over maritime borders, and now the reconversion of a monument at the very heart of Greek identity. And that raised the deeper question: how could a single building become a weapon of war? By the way, only 10.2% of you watching have subscribed. If you appreciate deep dive geopolitical analysis, hit like and subscribe. It helps us make more videos like this. In the Eastern Mediterranean, religion has never been just a private belief. It's identity, it's destiny. And when pushed to the extreme, it becomes a declaration of war. Go back to 1821. Greek revolutionaries weren't only fighting for freedom from the Ottomans, they were fighting for orthodoxy itself. The cross was their banner. Churches doubled as headquarters. After 4 centuries of Ottoman rule, faith and nation were fused so tightly together that to be Greek was to be Orthodox. Every monastery rebuilt was more than a house of worship. It was a strike against the empire, a rallying cry for independence. A century later, faith was still drawing borders. In 1923, the Great Population Exchange uprooted more than 1 million Orthodox Greeks from Turkey, nearly 500,000 Muslims from Greece, all because of religion. Churches were turned into mosques. Mosques became churches. Sacred spaces weren't just holy sites anymore. They became markers of ethnicity. Where you pray determined your passport, your neighbors, even your future. History wasn't just rewritten. It was forcibly redrawn on the walls of sanctuaries. But the rivalry didn't stop there. Take the Blue Mosque. When Sultan Ahmed I built it in 1616, he could have chosen anywhere in Istanbul. Instead, he planted it directly across from Hagia Sophia, and not by accident. The mosque had 6 minarets, 2 more than Hagia Sophia, in a grander courtyard. It wasn't just an act of faith, it was a statement. We are here, and we are greater. For 400 years, the 2 monuments have stood face to face, locked in a silent contest of dominance. That same dynamic repeated itself in Cyprus. When violence erupted there and Turkey invaded the island, the first targets weren't only military bases, they were churches and mosques. Turkish troops converted 500 Orthodox churches into mosques or warehouses, while in the south, more than 100 mosques lie abandoned, left as ghosts of another community's faith. The island was split, not just by barbed wire, but by the cross and the crescent. Sacred places became shields and swords, protecting ours while erasing theirs. And has the battlefield changed today? Only in form. Hashtags now serve as the new war cries. When Erdogan signed the Hagia Sophia decree in July 2020, hashtag Hagia Sophia trended worldwide within hours. Greek priests and Turkish imams clashed online, each side claiming the monument is theirs. Social media became the front line. Even now, Greek and Turkish warships are blessed before deployment, faith and firepower marching together. But how could one building hold such a long and painful history? And what was its original purpose before it became a political pawn? Let's take a quick break to thank today's sponsor, the Undercover Journal. This isn't your average news site. Think of it as a new, completely free-to-read magazine that digs into the world's shadow wars, espionage, cyber warfare, covert ops, all decoded by people who've actually lived it. Every week, they put out intel briefs, concise, razor-sharp, and scary accurate. And you're not getting recycled headlines of fluffy think pieces, you're getting true stories from real intelligent missions, the kind of stuff you normally only hear about years later, if ever. The best part? There's no paywall, no subscription fees. You just head to the-undercover-journal.com, register for free, and you're in. If you watch our videos because you love the way we uncover the world's power players and the real stakes involved, you're going to feel right at home in the Undercover Journal. So when this video's done, check the link in the description. I think you'll be hooked after reading the first brief. Back to our story. The year is 537 AD. Emperor Justinian stands beneath his new creation, Hagia Sophia. Its dome, an engineering miracle, seems to float above the city, dwarfing every other church in Christendom. For nearly 1,000 years, nothing would rival it. Justinian's vision was clear. This wasn't just a building, it was the beating heart of orthodoxy. Statement carved in stone that heaven itself had touched Constantinople. Pilgrims traveled from every corner of the Orthodox world to witness its golden mosaics, to hear the echo of ancient chants. Hagia Sophia wasn't just a church, it was the axis of a civilization. Then came the fall. In 1453, After a brutal 53-day siege, Sultan Mehmed II's armies broke through Constantinople's walls. The Byzantine Empire collapsed, and Hagia Sophia fell with it, or so it seemed. But Mehmed didn't destroy it. He stepped inside and claimed it. He kept the name Hagia Sophia, but transformed its soul. 4 minarets pierced the sky. The Christian mosaics were plastered over. Arabic calligraphy and the mihrab pointed worshippers toward Mecca. It's more than conquest, it was inheritance. By converting Hagia Sophia, Mehmed wasn't just erasing Byzantium. He was declaring himself the heir to Rome itself. The message was unmistakable. Islam now stood where Christianity once ruled. But faith has a way of surviving conquest. Under Ottoman rule, the Orthodox Church became the backbone of Greek identity. Priests ran secret schools. Monasteries sheltered rebels, preserving language and liturgian whispers. The ecumenical patriarch remained in Istanbul, a living symbol that orthodoxy has endured. And when revolution came, faith lit the fire. Priests blessed the guns of insurgents. Monasteries became arsenals. The slogan, freedom or death, was more than politics. It was a prayer. The cross flew over the battlefield, binding religion and nation into one cause. Centuries later, another wound was inflicted. In September 1955, the Greek community of Istanbul, once thriving with over 100,000 people, was shattered overnight. Mobs rampaged through the city, torching homes, looting businesses, and destroying 73 Orthodox churches in a single night. Graves were desecrated, schools attacked, and entire neighborhoods emptied. What became known as the Istanbul pogrom marked the beginning of the end for the city's historic Greek population. Within decades, that vibrant community was reduced to only a few thousand. The destruction of sacred spaces was not just collateral damage, it was the heart of the attack. The goal was clear: erase a people by erasing their faith. Through all this, Hagia Sophia endured. Neither fully church nor mosque, it became a mirror of the struggle itself. Every plastered mosaic, every uncovered icon, every recited prayer is proof that the story of this place is still unfinished. And that unfinished story would erupt into the present, because one decision in 2020 would turn Hagia Sophia from a relic of the past into the epicenter of a very modern confrontation. On the morning of July 24, 2020, Hagia Sophia's first call to prayer in decades rang out, and in that instant, the world's attention snapped to Istanbul. Within 48 hours, the hashtag Hagia Sophia had exploded across social media. 2.3 million tweets in 2 days. Outrage, pride, grief, centuries of history collided in real time. Alongside, hashtags like Never Forget 1955 and Our Mosque, Our Choice surged, as if the past and present were locked in a race to define the meaning of this sacred space. At Athens, church bells tolled mournfully. In Istanbul, crowds celebrated. The divide wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Cross-border tourism between Greece and Turkey dropped by 40%. Investors and cruise lines backed away, worried by the tensions bleeding into headlines. Economies paid the price. Greece poured 3.8% of its GDP into defense, while Turkey funneled $25 billion a year into its military. And in the middle of it all stood the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew I, spiritual leader to 300 million Orthodox Christians, watching from his residence in Istanbul, surrounded by police. His response was careful, almost whispered. In Turkey, he leads a dwindling minority. His church's future is restricted by laws that forbid training new clergy and even the full use of his title. He lives in the city of his forefathers, but under constant constraint. Across the Aegean, Mount Athos remained unchanged. a Byzantine stronghold where Turkish visitors are still banned under a 1,000-year-old rule. Their tradition is law, and the wounds of conquest are preserved in prayer in silence. Rhetoric from leaders only deepen the wounds. Erdogan called the reconversion of Hagia Sophia breaking the chains of conquest. Greek leaders responded by framing it as the defense of Christian Europe. National parades, ceremonies, and school books on both sides filled with religious symbolism, reinforcing what polls already showed. Over 70% of young Greeks and Turks now see the other as a threat. Religion wasn't just history, it was becoming the rallying cry of the future. And yet, even in the darkest moments, flashes of hope break through. In 1999 and 2023, when two devastating earthquakes struck Turkey, it was Greek rescue teams who rushed across the border with aid. More recently, both countries have found common ground in tackling climate change. These moments show what's possible, but they are rare. Against them stand millions of angry voices online, hundreds of sacred sites lost, and billions poured into weapons. The question lingers, are these small acts of compassion enough to outweigh centuries of resentment? Or will the scars of Hagia Sophia and everything it represents continue to shape the battles of tomorrow? Through centuries of conquest, conversion, and conflict, one thing about Hagia Sophia has never changed. Its name, Hagia Sophia. Holy wisdom. The Byzantines built it. The Ottomans conquered it. Kemal Ataturk turned it into a museum. Erdogan turned it back into a mosque. Empires have risen and fallen. Mosaics have been covered and uncovered. Prayers have shifted from Greek to Arabic and back again. But the name endures. Even Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, kept it. A quiet admission that some legacies are too powerful to erase. But here's the haunting question that lingers in every stone. What if, instead of erasing each other's sacred spaces, both sides had chosen to honor them? What if churches and mosques had been preserved, not converted? Could centuries of wounds have healed differently? Every covered mosaic, every converted church, every abandoned mosque is both a scar and a reminder. These places don't have to be battlegrounds, they could be bridges. The same stones have witnessed prayers in Greek and Arabic, cries of loss, and songs of resilience. So maybe the real battle isn't about domes and minarets, but about whether faith can unite instead of divide. What do you think? Can sacred symbols bring people together, or are they doomed to keep pulling nations apart? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this video insightful, we think you'll really enjoy the ones appearing on your screen right now. Special thanks to the Undercover Journal for making this analysis possible. If you're serious about understanding the real forces shaping the world, be sure to check them out using the link in the description below.